أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أفضل الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم آمين. So today is version or episode 10 of Inner Dimensions of Fasting. I've really enjoyed coming to you and discussing the inner dimensions of fasting, whether it's through the Imam Ghazali book that I've been referencing, or the workshop that's on that book. But the book is Kasr Shahutain, or the breaking of the two desires. For our purposes here, we're obviously focusing in on the desires of the stomach. So we last we essentially talked about in our previous session, heedlessness versus awareness. So the entire purpose of our fast is to keep us away from heedlessness and to steer us in the direction of becoming more aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, becoming more conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said that within heedlessness, you can really begin to go into or to fall into several traps, whether it's envy, jealousy, hatred. Some of these diseases of the heart are really easy to fall into once we are heedless of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not good for our God consciousness. So to be aware or to be present, to be a muttaqi, or one who has taqwa, you want to get to the point where, and this was beautiful when I heard it, I actually wrote it down into my notes. You want to get to the point when you go into ruku'ah, your heart goes into ruku'ah. When you go into sujood or a sajda, your heart goes into a sajda, right? And when you come up, your heart doesn't come up from that sajda, right? Your heart is constantly in sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a very hard status to reach. Some of the Sahaba would say, one Sahaba was quoted saying, I've been looking for 20 years to reach this state, right? So it's a constant struggle to reach this state, and it's not easy. And even when you attain that level, it's difficult also to maintain it, right? So it's one thing to reach a level, but then it's another to keep it going consistently. So we're, again, the point is, for example, to take your tongue into constant dhikr, right? So eventually that the heart gets into the dhikr, and does so without prompting, right? So it's almost like an unconscious level. So similarly, you want to fast a fasting of the heart. So what does that mean? It means basically to be concerned about your own internal state and not about external things external. Not to be concerned about others, not to be concerned about your appearance before the others. And then here it really mentions, the speaker really went into one of my favorite hadith. It's a hadith Qudsi. And I remember hearing this for the first time just a few years back, and it really struck my heart, subhanAllah. So the hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the heavens and the earth cannot contain me, but I reside in the heart of the believer, right? So what does that mean? That means that your heart you can't have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and something of the dunya in your heart. Your heart is one or the other. So your heart is going to be better with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your heart has to be fully 100% with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It cannot be, it's mutually exclusive. It cannot be a shared space. So your heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has to be number one, over and above everything. Your parents, yourself, your children, your spouses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to come over and above everything else. So, um, you know, when we began the course, we said that we have four enemies, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken the shaitan away. So that shaitan is one of those enemies, right? There are three other enemies that we have to battle with, constantly battle with, in regard to our soul. So the other three enemies, just to repeat it, so others that may not have been with us are aware. The other are the nafs, shahawat, or your desires, and the dunya. So with the shaitan, that makes the four enemies that Imam Ghazali speaks about in his books. Now, to attain victory over these four things, there are basically three levels. There are three levels of creation. One being the angel, one being the humanity or mankind, and the third or the bottom rung being animals. So the angels, what makes them special is that they have no choice. They have to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have no desires. They have no shahawat like mankind does. Mankind, on the other hand, they can go up a level to the level of an angel, or they can go down a level to the level of the animals. So how do they do that, right? If they maintain or they tame their ego, if they tame and maintain their desires, and they're able to break those desires of the stomach and desires of the of intimacy and whatnot, then they can attain the level actually even higher than the angel, because the angel, as we said, doesn't have a choice. They have to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the mankind has been tested and overcame that test to reach higher levels. So and if humankind or mankind cannot control those desires, their egos, and their ego, and cannot basically control their desires for the dunya and shahawat and the nafs, then they really fall down a level to the level of an animal, because an animal does as they please. They follow their desires, and they do basically without any restraint and without any control. So us as mankind, we can reach the level of an angel, right? But and attain the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So once you attain that level of an angel, you get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it goes beyond time and space. So it's not something like, oh, I'm 20 feet away, now I'm 10 feet away. No, this is beyond time and space, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not confined to time and space. So again, we have to regulate our behavior, and our Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends us the Quran and the Sunnah to regulate our behavior, not to negate our behavior. So for example, when we don't want to have sexual relations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't negate that desire. He regulates it by telling us that we have to go and get married before we engage in that behavior. So really what happens is, during this month of fasting, there is no benefit to those that are fasting from food and from drink, and are still engaging in their regular behavior. They're still backbiting. They're still, when they break their fast, they're filling their stomach to the max. They're not. There's no ghad al-basar. They're basically looking wherever they may their eyes fall upon. They hear vulgar, vulgar language and engage in that type of behavior. So what this type of a fast is really a wasted fast, because you're not realizing the fullest potential of that fast. It's a wasted fast. It's not really a fast that you're attaining the maximum benefit or the maximum potential, right? You're still pursuing your desires. So the idea behind the fast is to control those desires and break the desires, most especially the desires of the stomach. So and this, by the way, just looking at my notes, this, by the way, goes to a point that I want to highlight here. We're assuming, when we're talking here about controlling our desires and our shahawat, that it's a given that we're already keeping away from the haram activities. But what we're doing here is we're controlling the halal. So the food, again, during a normal day outside of Ramadan, we can engage in eating food and drinking, but we want to restrain even those desires, right? So that we are in control of the nafs and not the other way around. Assalamu alaikum, Ibrahim. Thank you for commenting. So we want to be in control of our nafs over haram, of course, but more importantly, even over the halal, so that we can control how much we intake and how much we engage in our desires. Again, riding the beast, making sure that we're in control of the nafs and not the nafs being in charge of us. And this speaks really to the hadith on the messenger that alayhi salatu wasalam, that we spoke about before, where the messenger said basically that many people will engage in fasting, and all they get out of it is hunger and thirst, right? They'll still engage in backbiting, they'll still engage in vulgar language and things that are below the standards of a mu'min or a muhsin. So basically from that hadith, you get the idea that there's deeper meanings behind the fast of Ramadan. And that's why we're actually having this class, right? The inner dimensions of our fast. So the scholars say there are some people that fast, but they're really eating physically, right? And other people are eating, but they're really fasting. So what do you think the scholars mean by that? Put in a quick comment in the chat and give me your quick feedback on what the scholars mean. How could you be fasting but really have taken part in breaking that fast? Or how could you be eating but really are in a state of a fast? Any ideas? Ibrahim, I'm sure you have an idea. Okay, so I'm just going to go on in the interest of time, and if you can punch in your comments in the chat, I'd appreciate it. But ultimately, some people are restraining themselves. You're not behaving like a fasting person. Okay, that's true. So you could be fasting physically from food and thirst, but in reality, you're backbiting, you're lying, you're cheating, you're engaging in vulgar behavior. So that's not a fast. Other people are eating, but they're eating in portions. So they're They're eating, yes, but they're really not eating to their full. So it's really a fast, but not a physical one. I see. Okay. So that's my bad, Ibrahim. But thanks. So the scholars basically say that you're in two positions when when you enter the month of Ramadan and when you leave. It's either that you make progress or you make regress, but there's no in between. Either you enter the month one way and leave that month as a completely different person and an improved person, or you entered into the month one way and you stayed the same and you leave having regressed. So that's not progress. That's actually regress. Okay, and I actually tell my kids all the time, uh, uh, if I should tell the youth group this, I would certainly say it as well, is that there's no such thing as staying in place or staying where you are. Okay, you're either going ahead or staying behind, but there's no such thing as staying where in your present location or present state. So what's interesting is that there's a hadith on Rasul where he says fasting is a trust. It's an amana. So this is the first time really that in studying this material for this YouTube session that I came across this hadith. Fasting is an amana. So it's a guest that you should be treating it well. It's going to come for a time and then it's going to leave. So make the most of that amana. It's an amana like your eyes are an amana. Your sight is an amana. Your body is an amana. You're going to be held accountable for this fast, right? So it's a fast. And he also mentions that as you're in the month of Ramadan, they recommend doing spring cleaning, not only in your not only cleansing your body, but cleansing your home, your rooms, and do physically what you're doing spiritually, right? That will be very, very helpful. So the voluntary fast and organizing your dhikr. So this now is going to go in. We're going to go into the virtuous days, when to fast, and maybe different behaviors for when you or different recommendations about how to fast. So the scholar says that there are certain days of every year, and there are certain weeks within every year, and there are certain months and days within every year that are special, and the fast within those specific days, and there are certain special days within the year. There are certain special days within the month, and there are certain special days within the week that are especially noteworthy for you to fast. So what are those? What are those days first? So the outside of the days of Ramadan, the next most special day is the day of Arafah, right? So this is the day of Arafah, the day of Ashura, the first 10 days of Zul Hijjah, the first 10 days of Muharram, and the sacred months of Muharram, Zul Qa'dah, Zul Hijjah, and Rajab. So these are special occasions for you to be fasting. They even mentioned the Prophet ﷺ would fast so much in Sha'ban that people would assume it's going to be obligatory to fast during that month. However, they did underscore that the last 2 weeks before Ramadan, which of Sha'ban, you should not try to fast unless it's a part of your regular habit. So Mondays and Thursdays, etc. You should try not to fast that, to make the month of fasting of especially Ramadan, to make it of a special worthiness, so it doesn't lose any of its luster. And they say here that the fast of the first 10 days of Zulhijjah, it's each day of fast in that month is like a year. It's a 1 year of fasting. Subhanallah. And each qiyam in the first 10 days of Zulhijjah is like the qiyam of Laylatul Qadr. Subhanallah. Right? So again, special days, fasting, qiyam are more rewarded during these occasions. Then they also mentioned special days within the month. So the middle of the month, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th are examples of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, where those are special days that would begin, that we should get into the habit of instilling fasting on a regular basis, inshallah. The special days of the week. So we know Mondays and Thursdays from the hadith, the Prophet's hadith sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But you can also fast Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So it's not just Mondays and Thursdays, but those 3 days are special, noteworthy days over and above any other day. So it's highly recommended that you fast those 3 days of the week. So it's mentioned that those that fast regularly are muhramin min al-nar. Those that fast on a regular basis, we're talking day in and day out, they're fasting there, and mahrumin min al-nar, they will be protected. It's haram for their skin to touch the hellfire. And the same by the way, for those that memorize the Quran, they will not enter hellfire. So those 2 ranks is something that we should attain to. So the scholar in this workshop also talked about 1 day fast, 1 day eating, 1 day fast, 1 day eating, and going throughout the year in that process. So 1 day fasting, 1 day eating, 1 day fasting, 1 day eating, so on and so forth. And this is praiseworthy because the day that you're fasting, you're showing patience. And then the day that you're eating, you're showing thankfulness or gratefulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is pretty hard because one day you're eating, you're engaging in your desires, and then the next day you're holding back, right? So it's alternating. And it's praiseworthy because it's like the sun and the moon, how they alternate, right? The day and the night, how those 2 signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alternate. So this is seen as a very praiseworthy type of fast. And it's also, by the way, the sunnah of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. So Prophet Dawood alayhi salam would fast 1 day and break his fast 1 day, and the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, Sayyidina Muhammad, would say that this is the best of fast and this is the most virtuous. So there's not going to be, outside of the month of Ramadan, there is not going to be a better fast than 1 day in, 1 day out. 1 day in, another day out. And they say here that the Prophet ﷺ never fasted a full month other than the month of Ramadan. Again, so that the month of Ramadan maintains its aura, maintains its specialness, and doesn't lose any of its luster. So they're saying the next level of fasting is, if you cannot do 1 day in and 1 day fast and 1 day eating, is to do a fast of 1 day and 2 days engaging in eating. And basically and they really give you a variety of ways to do this. So for example, you may do 3 days at the beginning of the month, 3 days in the middle of the month, and then 3 days at the end of the month, and that's roughly going to get you to a third of your time fasting, right? The other way would be to do it Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and so that's 3 days out of the week. And again, that's near a third of your time is fasting. So there's different ways to that. But again, we're trying to engage in regular habits of fasting and control of our desires. So they mentioned here that it's disliked to go 4 days in a row, 4 straight days without fasting. This is makruh, and the reason being is that it hardens the heart. It hardens the heart and opens the gates of desire, right? So what they mentioned next is having some activity that's non-negotiable for every day. So, for example, I'm going having your Qur'an to Quran, even if it's a small act, even if it's for 15 minutes. Maybe there's a small qiyam or a Salat al-Witr that you do after Salat al-Isha. Maybe there's a charity that you give to the masjid after every Jum'ah prayer. Something on a regular basis that's non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. It's part of your fundamentals. You wake up, you do it. Okay? So there's no room here for the nafs to get you tired or to get you lazy. This is a non-negotiable. This is something that must be done. So have something like that for yourself. And if you remember earlier in this discussion, what we talked about was having those Ramadan goals, having a Ramadan journal, and then if you remember, there was that sphere that had different areas of your life. So with Ramadan leaving in a short time, unfortunately, that's not a reason now to forget those activities. You should still have a journal and write down things that you want to see improve in yourself, things that you want to have goals for yourself. So by next Ramadan, you want to have certain goals in mind and write them down, because once you write them down, it actually helps you attain those goals. But if it's just in your mind, and if it's just in the back of your head, what happens is we'll typically forget about it, and it's almost like a New Year's resolution where in January everybody's going to the gym, but then by February the gym is free and clear, and we can go in and do what we like. So don't let this special month go by, and don't let it go wasted for you, because then we would be among the losers if we were in that scenario. So what we're suggesting is write down for yourself certain set of activities, keep a journal, keep Ramadan, keep goals for yourself. And and by the way, I'm telling you something that I impose upon myself first and foremost. I have a vision board in my room where I have certain goals for myself. Alhamdulillah, some things I've achieved and I've done well with, and other things, not so well, right? But that's normal, right? Now you can actually put it in your vision board, your goal sheet, your journal, and then knock off those goals one by one. So I highly recommend again maintaining a journal, maintaining those goals. And again, the idea is that you entered the month one way and you're leaving it an even better person. So don't let our fasting, the long hours of fasting, the long hours of qiyam, and all those things that we held ourselves back from, don't let it go to waste. And don't let it be Sawm al-Amum, as Imam Ghazali calls, right? We want it to be Sawm al-Khusus or Sawm al-Khusus al-Khusus. So you want to reach those upper levels and then enter into Bab Rayyan, into Jannah, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all our fasting, all our qiyam, all our good deeds during this most special month. And inshallah, may He, Allahumma balighna Ramadan, the next Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. So I'm just gonna stop here for a moment and give you the opportunity to ask any questions, any comments. and give you the opportunity for your feedback, inshallah. I hope you liked this class. If you have feedback, please put it into the chat as well. We're thinking about actually doing this outside of Ramadan, so that people can engage in fasting, whether it's every other day, every 3 days, at least the Monday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe we'll do something like that so that people can begin to instill that habit of fasting within our normal course of our lives. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer, because I think Ibrahim says that there's a long lag between the comment that he sent and when I see it. So please, if you have any questions, send it in now. Otherwise, I'll wait another 30 seconds before I close it off. MashaAllah, Marwa is saying, try to be with good companion, helping each other to achieve those targets is really helpful. And so that's a great point, Marwa, because ultimately what happens is those going to the gym with somebody, for example, is going to encourage you to do that behavior, or to do that goal that you have in mind. But if you if you do have a goal and you do write it down, it's really encouraged that you share it with somebody. That way they hold you accountable. But if you write it down and you don't hold yourself accountable, and there's no one else to hold you accountable, then what happens is, again, it's almost as if you're just keeping it in the back of your mind, and before you know it, it's forgotten, right? So you want to engage. Engage a friend that will keep you accountable. A friend that's going to let you slide by, that's not the task for them. Anybody that's going to hold you accountable, please take them as a friend, and they will help you achieve those goals. And we talked last time about the example of a good friend versus the example of a bad friend, right? The good friend is like in the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is like the one who makes fragrances, and that fragrance, once you're with that friend, that fragrance rubs on you. So the cologne, the incense, and the musk, that rubs off on you, right? But the example of a bad friend is like that of a blacksmith, where the dark, you can picture the inner workings of a blacksmith's working area, right, where it's dark and there's heat and it's sweaty and it's the smell is not pleasant, and that runs off on you as well. So you want to have the example of the first kind, and not the second kind, right? And there's actually a story of one of Ahl Makkah, when Abu Jahl left for a month. He went on a trip for a month. The Prophet ﷺ, and I forget the name, to be honest with you, but maybe we can follow up with that later. The Prophet ﷺ said, "I will not eat from this food until you say I believe in Allah and that I am His messenger." So he did so. He did so really out of he wanted out of treating the Prophet in a kind and gentle way, and he became Muslim. And then when Abu Jahl returned about a month later, he found out, and he says, "How dare you do this? right? And he made the friend go back to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and renounce his Islam, right? So there's actually an ayah, a verse in the Quran, and again, I'll have to get back to you on this as to where exactly that is. But it basically the scene, the verse describes the scene on the Day of Judgment where he will be eating from his hand for, I wish I would have taken the friendship of I wish I would have accepted from the messenger and been weary of the advice of that friend, right? So that's another example of a bad friend, in that he actually converted to Islam, reverted to Islam, and then when when Abu Jahl came, it had him renounce his Islam, and on the Day of Judgment, he's going to regret that action and eat from his hand in the scenery described in the Quran. So again, be mindful of the friends that we keep, because that actually has an influence on us. And I think here in America, the old saying goes is that if I want to get to know Tariq, then I should get to see or to see who he associates with, the 5 people he associates with the most, and you'll get to know Tariq just the way he is, from seeing just the 5 people that he most associates with. So again, be careful with who we align ourselves with, because it could lead to either a good location or a good ending, or the bad ending. Jazakumullah khair, Marwa. Allah barak fiik. Okay. At this point, I'm gonna sign off. I really enjoyed giving this talk. I hope you enjoyed and benefited from it. Like I said, we will see if we can extend this beyond the month of Ramadan, but we'll have more on that later, inshallah. In the meantime, subhanallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal 'asr, innal insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus salihat wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr. Assalamu alaykum.